Record, go.
This little horse is my first pony, and her name was Dixie. And after I had her, and she got to be 35 years old. And then when I got done with her, I sold her to, or my dad sold her to Shorty Bretzman. And they had that pony yet for years and rode her to the Delafield Church there, and that was Dixie there, see. So that's a very fine little horse there, and she got to be that old, see. And this is, we always had a 4th of July party out at Okabena. Okabena was famous them days already. And there they all sit, and then they'd get a keg of beer, and then they'd party. And that is my house there where Woody lives now, and that was a very beautiful house, and they had to tear that out of there and build a new one. See, that had the porch in the front there, you know, and that's the house where I was, well, I don't know if I was born. No, I was born south of Lakefield. But there's my pony Dixie. I had made a sled for it, and then I would drive her in the winter. I hitched her up and everything, and this was me at age 6.5. I was out on the farm. We lived northeast of Lakefield there, and here I am again. I got a hole in my pants there, but them days you had holes in pants all the time. And there's a chicken.
They do now also, and you pay big money for it.
Yeah.
He was in Chicago.
That was a natural hole I had there in the pants. And that was our place where Carlisle Thinner lives now. And it was north, just a mile from where Woody lives, you know, around the corner there. That was the home place that time. There is, I was at 3 weeks old, but I don't remember that. They're up there. And this is the house where I was born in, and that is south of Lakefield. A mile east of that Slovak church out there. And those days, my dad had that was in the Depression. So there was a big family, and then they started farming, and then they had to rent what they could get. So they rented a farm south of Lakefield there for a year or two, and that's where I was born there, see. And this is a little family picture here of us. My sister there, Dorothy, she was 5 years old, I was 3, and Harley and Amy, those two were the Canadian cousins. They moved up to Edmonton, Canada after a while. And they still live up there in Canada. And now Agent Burdell. Oh yeah, Burdell Wagner, see then. Then we had a get together, and the Wagners, they were good friends with the folks in there. So that would be me and Burdell there. They took a picture of. Ma, she was always wanted to take a lot of pictures.
What kind of camera did she have?
Ma had Ma's family was 4, I think, or 5. Yeah, 5. And she was born in Michigan. There's the house, second house that I lived in.
Where was it?
And that was down in Hollandale, Minnesota.
How long did you live there?
Not very long, and then we moved to this house. This was our house in Hollandale down there. My dad raised potatoes, and then he moved to Hollandale for 3 years. And he only stayed there 3 years, and I asked Pa, why didn't you stay there longer? Because see, all my uncles moved down there too yet from Lakefield, Herb and Leonard and them, they all moved to Hollandale that time. And then my dad said they bought the land from a land company, and they turned out to be crooks. So he said they had to get the heck out of there, and then they lost their land or whatever, and they left there. And here is my ma holding Irvin, and that's me. And that's, this is another one that was down in Hollandale.
Who was Irvin?
Irvin was my brother. My brother Irvin there, she's holding Irvin there.
And what happened to
See,
him?
and Irvin, he was just as healthy as could be there, a little guy is, until he was 3 years old. And then he was crawled on top, I remember crawling on top of our piano. And then one day he told Ma, he says, my legs hurt me. Yeah, Ma thought there was, something wrong with him. And that arthritis started then, and he got crippled. And by the time he was, well, he died when he was 9 years old, and he got crippled so bad by the time he was 4 and 5, they had to carry him everywhere they went. See that? And this is my dog, Rex. And that dog, when we lived in Hollandale, that was 100 and some miles from Lakefield, we'd go up to visit, and that dog rode on the fender all the way, all the time. He liked riding on the fender. They had the fender on them old cars that days, and then he'd get his front feet on top, and he'd look ahead, and all the way from Hollandale to Lakefield on the fender. Yeah, he was a kind of dog. That was Rex. And there's me and Irvin and Loretta.
Dorothy.
Or Dorothy. See, and look at Irvin, he was just as healthy a little character as could be there. He was just a year old or whatever. And there's my dad and Dorothy and I. Pa was 31 years old there, and
What did he do for a living down? Was he a farmer?
Pa was a farmer, and then, but when they went to Hollandale to raise potatoes, see, and a bunch of his brother, and then some of my uncles went down there, and Roger Colander's dad went down there, and they all went. It was a big thing down there, and the reason they went there was because Roy Schmidt, my uncle, lived down there and raised potatoes and cabbage and all that fruits and stuff. And so then the folks decided to move down there and try it. See, and then I say they lived there for 3 years, and then they come back here again because... Now here's something. This will blow your mind. That was a meter. Went across Minnesota here. And up here in... where in the heck did it crash into? A town up north here. Anyway, they put a big write-up in the paper, and I was only about 6 years old, and I was outside on that farm out here south, where folk lived, and I seen that thing go through the sky, and I run in the house, and I told Ma, I says, there's a flash went through the sky. It was getting dark in the evening.
That's amazing.
Outside, and Ma thought, yeah, a flash through the sky. I said, there's something burning, and went by our place. And here the next day it's in the paper. And it crashed up here by, the flowing meter fell from the sky August 4th, 1931. And I was 7 years old and I saw it fall. He came to Daddy and said, Daddy, I saw some fire fall out of the world. See, and then that crashed up there. Well, then the next day is a big write-up in the paper, and then they knew what I was talking about.
That was a bright one. Look how it lit up the
It
sky.
crashed right up here in North Dakota. See, it went by our place here. And
goodness.
Yeah. And then Mark always cut everything out. Here's the big write-up and everything. She would do
We got to
that.
get to that calf. That calf is somewhere in there.
He was,
Here's a
right at the beginning of the book.
That picture there is our family when I was little. That's Loretta and Janice and Irvin and
I got it too. I'll have it.
Ted, it's
Dorothy
important
and
to
me.
go over that little history there.
See, now wait,
Parents,
well, Janice
grandparents,
ain't even there.
It is.
Janice ain't even there. That's Loretta. See, Janice wasn't born yet.
Irvin's there.
Irvin's there. They're holding her. I ain't so old, but I've been around a long time. And there's Dorothy, age 3, and me at 8 months. See,
Dorothy was a big 3-year-old.
She was.
yeah, she was big, and I was.
One of the things I want to just kind of go back on is the family tree. If you could just mention who they
Oh, yeah,
were
okay.
and what they maybe,
Oh, my
Quickly did or something?
great grandfather was William Rysell, and I never got to know him. And the great grandmother was Mrs. Arnold Rysell, which that would have been way back. I wouldn't have known. Now, Mr. William Kraft Sr., that would have been my dad's dad, and he died when I was 4 years old.
Where was he born?
He was born in Germany, and I don't remember him because we moved to Hollandale when I was small, and then I just got up to visit there a couple times, and then we come up to visit that one time, and he was in Sioux Falls in the hospital, and then he died. So I never got to meet Grandpa Kraft, see, really, that I knew him, see. We slept in the horse barn there because it was much nicer. We were a little more free, and then they had an empty stall there, so we slept in the stall there and stayed with my calf at the fair there, see that. And then that calf, about the second year, then see, we had him for a couple of years. Then we got a tornado come through by our place, took the barn down. My calf was in the barn, killed my calf.
What year would that have been?
And that would have been, well, I was, about 13, 14 years old?
When their
24, 34, been about 37, 38.
You told me once a story, Dad, about a neighbor had a bull tied in a barn, and a tornado took that barn away, and they found the bull walking, still with the chain around the neck, tied to the broken post, some miles out
Yeah.
down the road.
He got that bull. The barn took the barn. The storm did, and then that bull, he was.
Do you remember at all who that was, who that belonged to? That
Well, he lived south of me there, and then they found the bull west there a couple miles. But see, when them storms come through them tornadoes, sometimes, boy, I tell you, they done some weird things,
Yeah.
So.
Let's go back to that one page, and if you could tell us just a little bit about your mom, where she was born, and, let me see here,
She was.
because that would be our children's great-grandmother, right here.
Okay, Mr. William Rysell, that was a great-grandfather. And that name, I don't
They must have
even,
been your Grandma Kraft's parents.
I don't even remember. The only thing was Ma's.
No, your mother's on the other side.
Oh, yeah, Mr. William Kraft, and that would be Sophia. That would be my dad's mother. And I stayed with her when I went to parochial school in Lakefield, and she come from Germany. But the funny thing was, she would never talk much about Germany, and I wanted to find out a little bit about Germany, where she come from. She come when she was 17 years old, see? Them days they did that, they come over that early, and then she ends up and marries my dad's dad, and then they lived in our country.
Where was your dad born?
Dad was born in Holstein, Iowa. They lived, Holstein ain't that far down there, but he was born in Holstein, Iowa. And then those days,
When was he born?
he was born in 98, 1898. Ma was born in 1900. So they were two years apart.
And where was she born?
She was born in Winona, Minnesota. And then they come up here and, to farm, they started migrating out this way them days, to farm and stuff like that. And then my dad met her and married her up here, see, but she was actually from Winona. And we went back to Winona when I was years back, younger years, and Ma showed me where she was born down there and stuff. And
Tell us about her parents,
well,
the Schmidts.
The Schmidts, after a while they lived here by Wyndham, and then Roy Schmidt, her brother, when we lived in Hollandale, they were raising potatoes, and then Roy moved up here to Lakefield, or to Wyndham too that time from Hollandale, because he got away from raising potatoes, and then he lived out north of Wyndham out here, and then we'd get out there and visit Roy in the winter and stuff.
How did your parents meet?
Well, that I didn't know too back down. That was years ago. Oh, Grandma and Grandpa Schmidt moved across the road from where Woody lives there. Timko's lived there now after I was young, but I mean they moved across the road there, and that's where my dad met my mother then.
They lived right across the road from you.
Yeah, from there, and they just moved up to them days. They had they had to get whatever they could when they find a place, and they were
Right.
coming up here from Hollandale to farm and stuff.
Sure.
And then that's where my dad met my mother, and then,
How old were they?
well, I don't know, but I'd say probably Ma was probably about 19, 20 years old, something like that, when they got married.
What else do we want
That
to
was
cover?
about it those days, and
That's pretty good.
but Ma, she was a kind of an exceptional woman. She even got to go to college a little bit.
Where'd she go to college?
Mankato. They had some kind of a
Commercial college.
commercial college or something in Mankato
Yeah, that's
there.
what Loretta said yesterday.
And she got to go there, not very long, but she got a little bit of college education. So Ma was, she was pretty well educated person, see. And then my mother, she took piano. Let's say she learned to play the piano. Well, then she had to play in the church and stuff a lot, And see, that's where I kind of learned to play then from Ma, from the piano. But I didn't, them days didn't have any money for lessons for, me, so I just learned by ear from Ma.
Did your mom teach Loretta and Janice and you all the musical instruments?
Well, yeah, then after a while it seemed like they spent a little more money anyway, and I picked it up by ear, so I never did learn to, and the bad part was I never could play in church, because then you gotta follow all this stuff through, how the service goes, and I played by ear, see, so I knew what they were doing, but yet, to follow that, you pretty had to play by music.
Was your mom artistic? Because we saw a lot of her paintings and drawings yesterday at Loretta's house.
That I can't really tell you. She maybe did, and maybe she went to some place where they done a lot of that stuff. I can't tell you
Okay.
if she was really done that by herself or not. No. But
How did you learn how to play the other instruments?
well, that I just kind of see. My dad had a little accordion when I was little. And so I picked that up, and when I was 5 years old, I could play pretty anything on accordion. Then we'd go to house parties and stuff, and them days they'd even dance right in the house like this, And then I'd always got stuck sitting in the corner playing the doggone accordion, even in the house parties.
Tell them about playing at the dance in Wilder.
Well, and then Wilder, I was 10 years old, and then Elmer Colander and Wilfred Rosser, they were from Lakeville, and Elmer married my cousin after a while. But anyway, they played in the Wilder dances there, and they could use accordion player. They knew I could play accordion, so I was 10 years old. And then that was in the Depression days now, when $1 meant $1 million,
Right.
So then they would give me $5 if I'd go along and play over in Wilder for a dance for them.
That was big
And they'd
bucks.
pick me up and bring me home. So the folks says, go, being it was, they knew them both, And there I sat at 1 o'clock at night and playing 10 years old, playing accordion in
Music.
Wilder at the dances. And then there was this one
And how
guy,
much money did you make?
$5.
And what'd you do with it?
Well, then the folks got the $5 and they maybe gave me a quarter, but I mean, those days you don't realize what $5 was.
Right.
When you didn't have money,
What could you buy with $5?
my dad got $11 a month for his cream check.
Oh.
And then Ma would take that $11 a month to buy everything we raised on the farm. We had meat, we had our butter, because I had a turn to churn when I was little, and we lived over here south there by Carlisle's Tender. But anyway, she'd take that $11 and go buy like sugar and flour and that stuff she had to buy.
Mm-hmm.
But think of it, that was the money you got. And my dad goes and buys a cow on a sale for $12 on a farm sale right here by Wyndham. And then he had to go up and get that cow with a team of horses on a wagon, and then I rode along with him. I was about 6 years old anyway, and then take him back to the farm from had the cow up behind the wagon, tied behind the wagon, and then we get that cow home, and the cow turned out to be very poor, so he turns around and shipped the cow. They had what they called a shipping association them days. They'd take it to the city, see, and then they had a butchering place up there. Well, anyway, he ends up, and he paid $12 for the cow, and he got $2 less when he shipped her to the city shit.
What was
See.
wrong with that cow?
Well, she just didn't turn out to be a milk cow like Pa thought she
I
was,
thought
you
you
know.
said she'd sit down and
Yeah.
try to milk her.
Yeah, she would, and you know, kind of goofy that it didn't turn out better than it did.
Now, how many years did you play professional music? When did you start playing
Well,
professional with the bands?
well, I started and, well, you know, I played, like I say, for 10 years. When I was 10 years old, I played in there, and then after a while, when I was about 18, then I started playing music. I played with Merlin Ross, and I played with different ones, and then we started playing around in dances.
And you played up till now.
Yeah.
You played with 4 and 5 bands in Lakefield's heyday, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, we
All 4 or
played.
5 bands?
Those days, them one-horse bands were all over the place, and if you could play music, you played with them. So, you know.
Made money, you
Yeah.
made some good money
What
through the
guys
years.
did you play with? Name some guys that you played with.
Or bands.
Kittlesons.
Man, I tell you, I should have wrote them
Ray?
down, but
Ray
I played with-
Reynolds.
I played with Ray Reynolds. I played with the Country Yanks. I played with the Country Sir. That was Kittleson
Kittleson.
down there. I played with
Cousin Lauren.
Craft Country. That would be Lauren and me, and then whoever once in
Willie
a while.
Colander.
Yeah, we'd get Willie Colander. He played
Did you
with-
play anything when you were in Reading, music? In Reading years?
No. Oh yeah, I did locally there, but then I could have had a chance to go on the road, you know, and that was out. See, I was not going to travel and be away from home. Reading in there, you know, I played different
You
things.
did with who? Who'd you work with?
Well, there was a
Jack?
guy-
Tracy?
Yeah, and then there was a guy up the street by us where we lived there back in.
Banjo was in the back.
Banjo was there and a couple other ones, and then already I think I could do my own thing already. I had my recording in the back there, you know.
What did you play when you played with the bands? What instrument?
Well, I played keyboard and
What did you play
I
with
played
bands?
steel guitar and I played fiddle that time, and I could play standard guitar, I could play harmonic, I could play accordion, I could play a lot of different. And then I even had a banjo and a mandolin there, so I could play them too, you know, and stuff. So I
Yeah,
played.
yeah.
And tell us about after you lost your hand. Could you-
Yeah, let's see your fingers. What happened there?
Yeah, tell them, put your
Show
hand
me your
up.
hand.
Show the hand.
And
It's
tell us what
waving at
happened
us. What happened?
and how old you were.
I was about 18 years old when I lost my fingers, and
How'd you lose them?
I lost them in a corn picker. But the bad part was, I was out. We were picking corn at a neighbor, and my dad had this two-row picker, and then them pickers were kind of new them days, you know, out. And my dad and his two brothers, Walter and Heidi, they bought this picker together. Well, then, doggone, I was just about old enough, you know, I could run a two, see, and so I was over there by a neighbor picking corn.
Oh, 18.
Huh?
You were 18.
I was about 18 years old. But anyway, doggone that picker, you know, was kind of bad. It would get dry in the fall, and then it would seem like it didn't want to go through in the fern. I had just bought me a new pair of gloves I had on. Well, then, you know, when that would plug up in the front, then I'd let the tractor run. I'd go back there and take an old corn stalk and kind of work the crap out of there. Well, then, doggone it, I had the corn stalk, but I had a new pair of gloves on. And somehow that went so fast, see, when them rollers went around, and I just had it running slow, but anyway, it caught that stalk and zip, got my glove in like that, and there I was, right in the snapping rollers. Well, then, the only way you got out was to grind them off, see, because otherwise it took my whole hand. Yeah, so then I just, you know, pulled it off. But it was really, in a way, was good, because if I'd have cut them off, I would have bled to death, see? But this didn't hardly bleed because it ground all them
Together.
shreds and together, and there was hardly any blood there.
And how did you get help?
Well, then I had to walk half-mile home up to the place there, and then they took me to Lakefield, and then Lakefield that time, old Rosie was down in a hotel in Lakefield. He had just a hole in the wall, one little room there, that's where the doctor was. So I go in there, and when I get in there, he couldn't do nothing. Then he hauls me to Jackson. See, that was the hospital. That's the closest hospital we had them days. Lakeville didn't have one. And boy, by the time I got to the hospital there, I tell you, I was in misery. You know, it was really hurting quite a bad there that time. You know.
Shock came off of you, yeah, the shock.
See, and then, then I had to lay in the hospital.
Bring your little guy up here so they don't wonder what all that blue stuff is. That is a face. When life gives you lemons, make lemonade, and this is little goobers.
Look at him, how happy he is. He is so happy there.
He's got some eyes drawn on him there, a little nose.
Yes, and then,
He's been famous in movies and everything.
And then, did you play instruments yet after that?
yes, I knew how to play them all ahead of time. But anyway, here was a goofy thing. I thought, I ain't gonna be playing nothing anymore. And then one night, we went somewhere and they always had music all over. And here's three guys playing, and one guy's playing a bass guitar with one arm.
Yeah.
He held it, and somehow he could
Pick it and play.
finger it, and then when he fingered it, somehow he picked it. He was playing with a band.
One
What a
arm.
beautiful job. Well, it was electrified,
Yeah.
you know. And I thought, what am I complaining about? I got, so I could do a lot of picking like this and still do a lot of fingering. So then I just kind of got back in playing again,
Now, it did keep you out of the war, correct?
Well, and then it come up to the war, and then that was just when
Your draft number came up
see, I had to go up to the cities then for the draft
to Fort Snelling.
to Fort Snelling, and then I get to Fort Snelling there, and that was just when I had my fingers off that fall. They weren't even healed or nothing. It was still, I think I still had some bandage on her yet. But you come up for the draft and you went. When they called you, you had to go. So I went to Jackson, and then the bus took us up there. I get to Fort Snelling, and I get to about the first guy I see in Fort Snelling. He says, "What are you doing up here?" Well, I said, "They sent me up here." Well, he says, "You ain't going to get nowhere, with this fingers like this." But still, I had to go through the whole rigging then, to all the tests. And those days, it was goofy. Nowadays, they got all these throwaway needles. Those days, here's a guy up there sharpening needles all day long because they use them needles over and over and over. And then there's a whole long row of guys. This is what caught me funny. A whole long row of guys standing there, and every once in a blue moon, then one, he'd see a needle and then, there he'd lay on the floor. God dang it, I wondered, what's wrong? And he even just seen the needle. That was enough. He was on the floor. Goofy.
What year would that have been?
Well, that would have been about 44. See, and then the thing, then I thought I probably could get into some other, so I'd done some checking around. And
Is that World War II?
And I think the Seabees, I think was one place I could have got in.
Oh, yeah.
I checked into it. Well, then the war was over in 45, so then I just didn't.
Now, what would you say was your career in all your years of working? What have you all done?
Well, I was, to start out with, I grew up on a farm, and I was actually a farmer, but then I got to, then after a while when we got married, then we moved out to California there, and stuff.
Built houses.
Then I got carpentering, and the reason I got carpentering was because my grandpa was a carpenter. Grandpa Schmidt.
Really?
And the house in Wyndham sits up here yet. I helped build that house. That's where Grandma Schmidt lived in.
That little house.
That little house back in there. And they built it out there on the farm by Roy, and then they moved it into town after a while,
How many houses would you say you've built over
Oh,
your
I
career?
don't know. I built quite a few in Wyndham here, and then I went over to Lakefield and I built, and then in California, that's all we done is build houses there, but we always built two at a time. I can't remember how many. We probably built quite a few.
Now, when they wanted to find water, what would you do? You would do something if they're looking for water.
I could witch water, see.
How'd you do that?
Well, you take two wires, like this, put them in your hand. I gotta get two of them together again, because I always had two. And then you go along like this, and then when you get to where the water is, they turn in. See, and or over a water pipe, it'll do that. And and it's something that is only certain people have, where it'll draw like that. And then different ones would get me to find field tile in the field, you know. Leland Pullman, I had to go over there and find some field tile. He was going to do something with his tile, and he didn't know where the tile was. And Christians, yeah,
What about them?
yeah, out there where he had land out there, south of Lakefield.
Well, one time in Reading, you were working with the Raisner boys building a home, and the city water came out
Oh, yeah.
and said, no, it's not here, and you said, yes, it is.
That was goofy. See, they marked it, the city did, when you come and put a new house in there where the water wasn't. Says, we went over there and looked at that or I think they dug down there, there was no water there. So I took a couple wires and went along there, the side of the street there, and I didn't go very far. Here was the water. So I went to the city and I says, what kind of a thing you goofed up here? I said, you tell us the water's there, and there's no water there. But I says, I'll show you where the water was, and I marked it there. Oh, they had to go see where it was then, and there it was. See, I could find that, you know, with
And they called it witch water?
well, it's
Witching for water.
yeah, it's witching for water, but everybody can't do it. That's
Electronics,
something
electrical.
electronics you have in your system that others don't have. And when we moved down to Heron Lake there that time, I was going to put a well in there. See, and there again, I walked around there. The guy from Worthington was going to put a well in, and well, they didn't. You know, they could dig anywhere if they wanted to. But
Right.
I went along there, and I says, "Here, you better try it here." I says,
You found
"Looks
it.
to me like." And then it come from 2-3 ways, and it always that was the place. That's where we put the well, and by golly, we hit her right away there. You know, so and so that was kind of that witching deal. I should do it again once and, you know, see.
If you still have the touch?
Yeah.
Oh, it's in you. You got it, you know, if you got it, you got it. See,
Have
and,
him talk about the mink business.
Mink, yeah, she raised mink. Well, how did you get into the mink?
the mink we got into, my uncle Walter Schmidt raised mink down there in Albert Lee, and that's how we got started in the mink business. And then, my uncle Ed Kraft, and he got raising some mink in Lakefield there too. And then we got started in the mink business, and then
You and your dad?
my dad and I, and then we had about 1,000 mink every year. And then when we were in that mink business for a couple of years, and I was kind of looking for a place of my own, so that's how come I moved to Mountain Lake then, because we were picking up the heads in Butterfield, which was closed.
Turkey heads.
Turkey heads. So then this farm come up on Mountain Lake, with just 80 acres. So then I bought that, and then we lived by Mountain Lake there, and then they put the mink set up there, and then I would pick up the stuff in Butterfield and grind it, and then we'd take it down to my dad, and he had enough. We both had a couple big walk-in freezers. And
Now, the mink went out because of imitation for when? Late 50s, mid 50s?
The mink went, the Humane Society got on their neck with a mink, and after that, no more mink. Now, isn't that something? He'd stick his fingers in the cage, and then he'd get it, boy.
Finish the quick story and we'll be done. About the mink. What happened then with the mink?
Oh, then the Humane Society said that they couldn't raise mink anymore. And then after that, they all had to quit. And that days when we were raising mink, that was one of the big industries. Wisconsin was the biggest state,
Over there, right?
and they had hundreds of mink ranches in there, and then all over the country they had them. And then
And everybody quit. Your uncles quit,
Yeah,
everybody,
they
but
all-
Leonard Schmidt.
yeah, Leonard Schmidt, he had to quit then after a while.
No, he kept mink all those years, I think, a few of them. And Silver Fox.
Well, he had to stayed with the silver fox, but no more mink. He couldn't get rid of the mink. No, he couldn't get. He was raiding some silver fox. That's why he kept going yet with them.
Yeah.
But the mink, no, the mink got pushed out, and
What did you do with the mink to process them or get rid of the fur? How did you do that?
Oh, well, we skinned them and then you pelleted and put them on boards.
Tell the camera.
I got, out there in the farm there yet, in that shed out there, there's a whole bunch of mink boards there. We'd have a couple hundred of them, you know.
What'd you do with the mink boards?
Well, that's where you put the hides on and then you dried them, see? And when I'd kill about 25, 30 at a time, and then I'd put them on boards, and then we had to flesh them, you know, scrape all the fat off the flesh
You were
and then dry them.
You were pretty nice to those mink when you had to kill them. I remember we
Oh, yeah.
used cyanide gas, I think, in a little
I
box.
had a little deal, built a box about this long, and there was 2 sections in that box, and they had a little door on the end, and then I could push, I think, 4 or 5 of them in on this side, and then below that I had a tray where I put the cyanide gas, you know, underneath, and that would kill them, see? And then you'd put them in there, and then you'd take them out.
You'd be
and
sleeping.
then you'd go skin them, and then,
Where'd you sell the fur?
oh, and then the New York Fur Exchange, they had a big office. That was big time them days. Minneapolis is where we'd send them to, but they was all over that time. You could, Seattle and New York, and man, that was big time. They
How
had
much
these.
would you get for a mink?
Well, we averaged. Now this is average. We had different kinds. We had the pastel. The standard mink was the standard dark mink, the dark brown or dark black. But then they started to raise mutations that would be different colors. We had the breath of spring. We had the pastel. We had they had some Snow White that they had after a while. And then you'd get more money for them. See, now we averaged about $19 to $20 a pelt
How many
for
did you raise in a year?
for the overall average. Some of those pastel would go up to $60.
I know, when I was a kid, they were up.
Yeah, and then we had always pelleted, my dad and I did, between the two of us, about 800 mink a year, you know. So that was, you got into a lot of money in them days, you know, with those pelts and stuff, see.
Plus you made fur coats for the ladies
Yeah,
too, didn't
and
you?
then them days the ladies had fur coats and then these stoles.